I have been told many times that Canada is one of the greatest countries in the world, and that it's our multiculturalism policy that sets us apart. I agree, even though many countries have similar, if not better, practices of incorporating multiculturalism, our policy does set us apart. We have not only included the policy in legislation, but are one of the unique nations to have ever constitutionalized it. It consistently serves to remind us that multiculturalism provides us with solidarity and that multiculturalism is a part of our nation's distinct identity. Yet, I have always been curious as to how the actual policy itself relates to my life as being a Punjabi Canadian. It has made me question again and again whether I will lose my Punjabi culture as I grow older, if I will have the ability to access or perhaps even transform parts of our society, and whether or not I will continue to question my Canadian identity. Perhaps I will find out if I look into the experiences of others.
My name's Gurinder Sidhu. I was born in downtown Vancouver in St. Paul's Hospital in the 60s, a long time ago. So I'm a born and raised Vancouver guy. And I'm 49 years old. I'm married. I've been teaching in Surrey for over 20 years. Very interested in topics related to people's movements and human rights and topics like that. So it's nice to be able to teach the kids that information. I don't think they get enough of it.
My name is Cal DeSange, and I've been in law enforcement with my respective department for the last 15 years. Recently transferred over from being a beat cop in the downtown east side to an investigative division. But on top of that, my main focus is also working within the community, specifically Surrey. And the demographic that I'd like to work with is youth. And so my main focus and goal is do as much as I can to keep the youth away from the lifestyle of drugs, gangs, and crime. In order to do so, I'm one of the co-founders and co-created Kids Fight nonprofit organization.
Growing up, early on when I was a kid, I actually knew how to speak Punjabi quite well. And my parents used to force me and my sister both to speak it in the house. And we'd get in trouble if we spoke English. So I learned it. But then as I got into high school and into university, I kind of forgot. And I stopped using it. And I almost lost the language. Then when I finally came back when I got into teaching, and I started teaching specifically in Surrey and Newton, it came back to me, just being, because you're kind of immersed in it, and the community speaks it, so I've kind of embraced it again.
My mom and dad made it a point of speaking Punjabi to us in the household all the time, but they also put us in Punjabi school. And so I remember my brother and I, every Wednesday and Saturday night, we used to be in Punjabi school at Ross Street Sikh Temple. Punjabi is spoken in the house, with the exception of me. I'll be honest, I speak English to the kids, but they learn Punjabi in school, and I make sure of taking them to the Gurdwara as well, so they understand what our culture is all about and what our religion is all about. When you grow up in a Southeast Asian household, no matter how westernized it is, it's always going to be some relics, and they're reminiscent of the religion, of the culture, which get passed on from one generation to the next. So it's never lost.
You start realizing that it's good to belong to something, and I think with when you're born into it, it's so deeply ingrained in you. Especially, it was deeply ingrained in me. Even if I had wanted to dismiss it and not be totally Punjabi, the way I live my life, I don't think I could have done it, because I think it's just part of me.
with the arrival of Baldesh Dillon, who was the first Sikh police officer in the RCMP, that was huge. I mean, that was just this monumental shift with respect to perceptions and belief systems in the police departments, and that essentially blazed the trail for a lot of visible minorities to come into policing. I remember seeing that when I was growing up, and it was admirable, and I found that very inspirational.
In this community here, there's so many South Asian and Punjabi kids that I think because we've got a shared set of values and way we've been brought up and the way of looking at the world, etc., that I think we bring something different to the education system that others can't. Like if I look around even in this school, off the top of my head, there's probably, in terms of South Asian teachers, like Punjabi teachers, there's at least a dozen or so, maybe more, and schools around this district, I know it's also similar. We've got the principal of the school is Punjabi. There's other administrators in Surrey elementary and high schools that are also Punjabi, and if we're looking at other fields apart from education, we're looking at government. We can just we just had 4 Punjabi cabinet ministers that were appointed, including the Minister of Defense, which was something that all of us can be proud of. And I think we're kind of entering all fields, whether it's private sector or public sector, and doing great things.
In the 80s, you gradually began to see this paradigm shift in thinking process, and just this gradual evolution with respect to policing, but transformation of society in general. It was the labeling which identified me when I was a kid, where it was made quite clear to me that I was an outsider. We were always treated as foreigners and always treated as an outsider. And so for us, it was just a matter of fighting back, literally speaking, and trying to make our way in this world and sort of try to transform other people's perceptions at the same time. But like I said, it was a very difficult process. But it made us who we are.
Growing up, I'd say probably there was times where you question what being Canadian is if you don't feel welcome, and you're facing racism on a regular basis. So you don't, it might make it a little bit harder to embrace the concept of what a Canadian is. But as you grow up and you start seeing the good things that entails. Then it becomes easier to see yourself that way. And like I said before, I'm born here. I am Canadian, right? I'm very rooted here. And even if there's other people who see, what a Canadian is in other terms, I know what it's really supposed to be, and I embrace that.
With increased knowledge, as the environment changed, so did the public perceptions, and you saw a greater significant reduction in negative public perceptions and stereotypes. And so on account of that, later on in life, you obviously begin to see more and more yourself as part of the greater community, greater Canadian community, and you are a Canadian. And that's how I always perceived myself, is that regardless of the adverse circumstances that I had to face, I never allowed it to twist or distort my perception of who I really was, and that is Canadian. Policy, laws, and regulations are respectively innocuous and papier-mâché tigers unless they are put into use, unless you give them claws and fangs. And so with this policy, case in point, look at the Criminal Code of Canada. Those are laws which everyone is supposed to abide by. Do they? No. Well, why are we still arresting people every single day? Because laws are meant to be broken, and these individuals don't respect those laws. And so same thing, with respect to multicultural policies, sure, the policies were there. Sure, the policies were enshrined in our constitutional framework. Were they exercised or observed all the time? No, absolutely not.
I think having the Multiculturalism Act in place as part of Canadian law is it's empowering for people, and it's not just lip service. This is something that it's a foundation of our country that our country's based on, and having that in place, I think it just gives it so much weight and importance, and it's going to get further ingrained and further strengthened in the future.